Hello. Welcome to That's Good Sports. I am your football host, Brandon Perna, and NFL teams are starting to shake up their rosters in preparation for free agency. Not unexpectedly, but maybe most interestingly, the Commanders and the Falcons released former second overall draft picks from 2015 and 2016 in QBs Marcus Mariota and Carson Wentz. The Denver Broncos are still interested in Matt Patricia, and maybe most shockingly, a report emerged that Tom Brady is waiting a year to start at Fox because he wants to pursue stand-up comedy. Naturally, I want to help Tom prepare with jokes for his set, which I'll give you today in this episode of That's Good Sports. YouTube makes me do this thing where I ask you to subscribe, so consider it done. Also, if you want to support this channel, check out my coffee company, BenchwarmerBrew.com. In January, we launched our Loser's Blend of craft roasted beans. And as usual, the cheapest way to get my coffee is by signing up for our subscription service. And tomorrow, Wednesday evening, 7 p.m. Mountain, is our Patreon and YouTube members hangout, our Zoom hangout info in the community tab and on Patreon, so check it. Denver Broncos head coach Sean Payton spoke at the NFL Combine, and he stated that there's still a chance that Matt Patricia could end up on the Broncos coaching staff. Payton smartly noted that he needed to talk to Vance Joseph and get his approval first, but Patricia was one of the first guys Payton wanted to interview for the defensive coordinator position. And if you watch this show, then you know how I feel about Pencil Dick, which again is a term of endearment. Why is that so hard to understand? Look, it's pretty clear that Patricia does not have the makeup to be an NFL head coach. He ruined everything the Lions had going for them, including making their defense worse, which was supposed to be his specialty. I could have lived with Patricia as a DC here in Denver, but if he joins the Broncos in an even lesser role, I think that's a win. Broncos fans thought we had erased the idea of Patricia in Denver because the team hired Greg Minuski as their linebackers coach. However, if Patricia joins the Broncos, it will be as a senior defensive role. Essentially, they'd make up a title for him, which honestly would be a great addition for Vance Joseph's staff on defense. Keep Patricia away from dealing with the players and making personnel decisions, and just let him use that big brain to draw up schemes with that number 2. We do this thing when guys fail as head coaches in the league, where we discredit anything they've ever accomplished prior. I think Patricia has a lot to offer as a defensive coach in an environment where he is not the leader. Now, the New York Giants are releasing wide receiver Kenny Golladay on March 15th. NFL fans across the league politely asked, who? Now, this move will free up $6.7 million in cap space for the Giants, who also traded away receiver Kadarius Toney during the season. The Giants' disaster that was their receiving core was a big story all season, and Kenny Galladay's 4-year, $72 million contract in 2021 may be one of the worst wide receiver deals in the last 10 years. Michael Thomas? Unfortunately for Golladay, he hasn't played a full season since pre-COVID. Also Michael Thomas. There's probably not much of a market for Golladay, but he could benefit from a pretty thin wide receiver free agency group. Bills defensive coordinator Leslie Frazier is taking the year off, not long after his defense decided to take a game off in the divisional round against Cincinnati. All of that notwithstanding, Frazier has been a great assistant coach for a long time, and he's put together a top 2 scoring defense in 3 of the last 4 seasons in Buffalo, which is something we don't give him enough credit for doing. The defense fell apart by their standards at the end of last season, in large part because of the losses of players like Von Miller, playing most of the season without Micah Hyde, and of course the entire DeMar Hamlin situation. Meanwhile, in Buffalo, you have another star in safety Jordan Poyer saying that he wants to play in a state that doesn't take half of his money. In other news, the Pagulas have announced they are now the Buffalo Bills of Pensacola, Florida. Tom Brady, according to sources close to him, has delayed his start in the Fox broadcast booth because he wants to pursue stand-up comedy, which in the biz, Tom, that's called a punchline. Now, I honestly believe that becoming a great stand-up comedian is harder than becoming a great NFL quarterback, and I think it takes more courage to do it. So if Tom really wants to try this, I respect it. That said, do you remember when Tom Brady hosted Saturday Night Live? No. It's because his comedic chops they're lacking, which is why we'd all be very lucky to see him hit the mic. He wasn't the worst SNL host, and he was funnier in TED or TED 2, or I don't know, maybe it was a TED Talk. Regardless, I want to help my friend Tom, and I'm weirdly qualified to do this. So here are some free jokes Tom can use on stage at his first open mic. I suggest Tom imitate some other comedians until he finds his own style. Starting with the stylings of Norm Macdonald. People give me a lot of crap for eating healthy, which is funny because crap is clearly something I don't eat. Also, Norm, now that I've retired, I think Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. And it's a little ironic to me that O.J. Simpson is his biggest fan.
It's me, O.J. Mahomes.
Yeah, since most players say Patrick Mahomes is the current NFL star, most likely to murder his wife, Louis C.K. A lot of people say I like to kiss my son, but folks, I've never jerked off in front of Peyton Manning, Amy Schumer. A lot of people say I like to kiss my son, but folks, I've never jerked off in front of Peyton Manning with my vagina. Andrew Dice Clay. I like two things in this world, winning Super Bowls and eating Bush. And I'm all out of winning Super Bowls. Anthony Jeselnik. Heath Ledger always told me that Eli Manning would never win a Super Bowl in his lifetime. And you know what? He was right. Rodney Dangerfield. I get asked all the time, what's harder than winning a Super Bowl? And I have to tell them, Robert Kraft anytime we had dinner at a Chinese restaurant. Bill Cosby. You know who I like? That Deshaun Watson. Jerry Seinfeld. What's the deal with all of my white receivers? Welker, Adelman, Amendola. Sounds like my buddy Kramer was the GM. Pete Davidson. Now I'm dating Michelle Obama. Per TMZ, the most credible news source on earth, the Tom Brady stand-up rumors are apparently not true, but a roast of Tom Brady on Netflix may be in the works. So here's Eli Manning roasting Tom Brady. Tom, buddy, I saw that after your divorce was finalized, your ex-wife Giselle started dating a jiu-jitsu instructor. If she wanted to date someone who could easily subdue you, I would have fucked her for free. Alabama quarterback and projected first overall pick in the NFL draft, assuming the Bears trade their pick, Bryce Young, will not throw this week at the Combine. A power move to assert his dominance over C.J. Stroud, Will Levis, and Anthony Richardson, who will all throw. Now, I'd love to say quarterbacks have nothing to gain by throwing at the Combine or at their pro days, but I'd have to ignore Zach Wilson getting drafted second overall because of this throw. And now, the team that reached for him, the Jets, are either making a move for Derek Carr or Aaron Rodgers. The Carolina Panthers will also have a meeting with Derek Carr this week while teams are in Indianapolis for the scouting combine. Carr will also meet with the Jets and the Saints again. This will be the third time Carr meets with the Saints, to which they have asked Carr, how many times do we have to meet with you before you make up your fucking mind? Now, if I'm Derek Carr, and as you can see, I am not, but if I was, I'd rule out New Orleans, who's in a very precarious cap situation, and decide between New York and Carolina. Ultimately, as I've said before, I think Frank Reich and Derek Carr make too much sense together. And of course, it's impractical to have a Carr in New York City. The Atlanta Falcons released quarterback Marcus Mariota, saving the team about $12 million in cap space, catapulting the Falcons into the number 2 spot in the league in terms of cap space right now. This means the door is wide open for second-year quarterback Desmond Ridder. Unless, of course, the Falcons, with the 8th overall pick in the draft, make a move for a QB. Maybe someone falls to them at 8, or maybe they jump, say, the Raiders to take a guy they fall in love with. These were ideas I was speculating just in my head, and then their GM, Terry Fontenot, went on the NFL Network this morning and hinted that's exactly what they're thinking. He, of course, stated that they like Ritter, but he didn't exactly give him a vote of confidence or the job moving forward. I think this money-freeing move for the Falcons also makes them a quiet player for one of the veteran QBs available as well. The Falcons were a team close to landing Deshaun Watson just a year ago, which is why Matt Ryan left. Talk about dodging 2 bullets there for Atlanta. So don't rule out Derek Carr, Jimmy G, or even Aaron Rodgers at this point. That said, Atlanta needs a lot of help and should spread their money around and acquire depth in free agency. Finally, the Washington Commanders released quarterback Carson Wentz this week. I know one NFL head coach had to pour cold water on himself after hearing his guy was available yet again.
I'm the chief of all sinners.
Carson Wentz, if signed, will land on his 4th team in 4 years. Trey Wingo posted an interesting observation in that top quarterbacks taken in 2015, 2016, and 2017 drafts. The only one still with his original team is Patrick Mahomes. The only outlier there is Deshaun Watson, but you could argue that he's not very good now either. Carson Wentz has had one of the stranger NFL careers I can remember, and between Trey Lance and himself, they may have ensured no quarterback is ever drafted in the first round after playing at North Dakota State. Wentz was on the cusp of winning an MVP as a second-year player, and that torn ACL he suffered against the Rams changed the entire trajectory of his career. It did not prevent him from earning over $100 million in the NFL, but it changed who he was as a player on the field. More than any player I've ever seen, Wentz's downward slide feels like the result of lost confidence more than anything else. Seeing your backup win the Super Bowl does strange things to a man. Just ask Phil Simms, who went from an elite quarterback to farting on Jim Nantz.
I think it's warmed up, though, Jim, just to talk about the atmosphere of the game. What do you think? Are you warmer now than you were earlier in the game? Or are you just numb?
I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm worried about you.
Also, this clip is so much funnier when you realize this was the last game Simms and Nantz called together. Carson Wentz, if he wishes to continue in the league, will probably have to accept a backup role moving forward. That seems like a pretty obvious statement, but it might not be to Wentz at this point in his career. Unlike Geno Smith, who had a greater resurrection than Jesus Christ, Wentz has been given the keys to the car 3 separate times after his injury. Geno never really got a fair shot after having his jaw broken by a teammate. The Eagles invested in Wentz after Nick Foles won Super Bowl MVP. Frank Reich pounded the table for him and got him the gig with the Colts, a good Colts team, while Jonathan Taylor had one of the best years as a back behind him, and Ron Rivera had to be forced to put Bush-drinking Taylor Heineke on the field ahead of Wentz. While there were some flashes for Wentz in Indy and early in Washington last season, he was not able to capitalize on his opportunities or play consistently well. Maybe like Geno Smith, he can find that confidence again in a backup role and wait for the next good opportunity. I just don't think that will be in 2023 unless there's an injury. There's also been this stigma with Carson Wentz that he's not a great locker room guy. I don't know if that's true. I don't. But at this point, he may be way down on the list as even a backup for that very reason. There's a smorgasbord of first-round quarterbacks who can be had as backups this offseason. Marcus Mariota, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Carson Wentz, and somewhere, hiding deep in the weeds, Josh Rosen. If he's lucky, maybe Tom Brady will allow him to be his opener on the road. Thanks for watching That's Good Sports News Dump. Please, if you like football shit, subscribe here on YouTube, and let's encourage Tom Brady to try his hat at stand-up comedy. I think he can do it, guys. I think he could do it.